Hi, I'm Raven. That's Jasper. Welcome back to my channel.
Subscribe to become part of the hive. Be sure to like and ring the notification bell. Thanks, honeybees. Enjoy the video.
No cats today in the intro. I didn't feel like chasing them around the apartment. I know it's been a minute since I've sat down and filmed a video like this. It's been a big year. I recently got a job in social media, so I've been spending kind of all day on a laptop doing social media things, and it's really hurt my motivation to do social media things and videos for myself. So that's kind of why I just don't feel like being on a laptop for 8 hours a day and then editing on a laptop in my own free time. But we're back because it is time to talk about the highlights, the movie highlights of 2025. I'm going to structure this video a little bit differently than I've done it in years past. What I've done before is I've kind of talked about the top 20 movies and then the bottom 10. I'm still going to talk about the top and bottom, but I feel like when I do that, I miss a lot of movies in kind of the middle of the spectrum. A lot of new releases come out every year, and I feel like when I only give focus to either extreme end of the spectrum, I'm missing a lot in the middle that I feel like are worth talking about. So instead of just best and worst, think of this as more of 2025 movie highlights. We're going to start from the bottom. We're going to work our way through the entire spectrum of films that I think are worth mentioning for better or for worse, up to what I think are the best movies of 2025. Starting with the bottom. So what I usually do is talk about the movies that are on my actual bottom, the actual bottom 10 movies on my list. But because I love watching straight to streaming films, there's a lot of movies that come out that are worth watching that are direct to streaming. Most of those movies are trash, and a lot of those movies end up at the way bottom of my list. When I talk about my list, I'm referring to my entire ranked list on Letterboxd, so follow me on there if you want to see the full ranked list of every movie I saw in 2025. Usually how that goes is I just say this is the bottom 10, these are the movies and what they were about, and you probably haven't heard of them, and I'm not going to waste my time doing that. So I'm going to kind of take a select couple of films that are towards the bottom of my list and talk about those instead, so that we're not here all night talking about direct to streaming garbage. Actually, immediately after saying that, I do have to dial it back a little bit because one of the movies on the very bottom of my list is Happy Gilmore 2, and I feel like that is a movie that is significant that came out this year, so even though I do consider that direct to streaming garbage, I am still going to mention it a little bit. Happy Gilmore 2 is the sequel to Happy Gilmore, the Adam Sandler golf movie that came out in 1996. So the sequel is coming almost 30 years later, not quite. They should have just waited one more year and had Happy Gilmore 2 come out in 2026, so it could have been exactly 30 years later. Kind of missed the mark on that one. It's just one more year. I don't know. Happy Gilmore I saw for the first time this past year as well, and it's fine. I'm an Adam Sandler fan. I'm not really a fan of his whole screaming shtick. So I don't really remember much about the movie, but what I will tell you about Happy Gilmore 2 is it's just the most joyless movie I've ever seen. It was boring, it was joyless, it was unfunny. Adam Sandler just seems like he doesn't want to be there. I don't really understand the direction that they went with it. They immediately kill his wife. The first movie in Happy Gilmore, there's this whole romance subplot that we spend a good portion of the movie on, and they end up together. In between both movies, they get together, get married, and have all these children. And in the very beginning of Happy Gilmore 2, we learn that she's died. And so we're starting with depressed Happy Gilmore, long since retired, a widower, grown children, and just this rock bottom place in his life. And he has to get back into golf and win all this money to get his daughter into a fancy dancing school. And he's just miserable the entire time, and it's not fun to watch. And I've heard that critique about a lot of Adam Sandler movies where he just looks like he wants to be anywhere else. And I disagree for a lot of that. I think Adam Sandler still has fun with movies, but this one, yeah, I could see it. He was just there for a paycheck on this one. And that's really kind of all I have to say about Happy Gilmore 2. I don't really think there's anything else worth saying about it. I give that one 2 out of 5 stars. Another sequel that came out this year that's towards the bottom of my list that I was also very disappointed in was Megan 2. Disappointed in a different way than I was with Happy Gilmore. I wouldn't say I was disappointed in Happy Gilmore because I didn't really have high expectations for it. Megan 2, I had slightly higher expectations because I did enjoy Megan 1. Megan, the original, wasn't like the greatest movie. It's supposed to be a horror movie. I think it could have been more horror focused with the whole like killer doll thing. I thought it leaned a little too much into the sci-fi aspects of the story, and I think that that was purposeful. For me, I wanted something a little more horror forward, and that's what I was thinking going into it, the original. So when they were making Megan 2, I was hoping that they would lean more towards into the horror in this one. I knew that they weren't going to because of how much of like an icon Megan had become since the movie came out, like with her being a character at like Halloween Horror Nights, with like the big focus being on like her dance and being like, you know, like a cunty style character, like whatever, like really like memifying her kind of. So I knew they were gonna kind of lean into that. So a part of me was expecting more of like a fun comedy version of Megan for the sequel, and we kind of got that. It's kind of like they were trying to go for that, but they really missed the mark. I feel like it's not even worth it to even really talk about the plot of Megan 2. It's not really worth it to talk about the plot of any of the movies in the bottom. We'll talk about plots once we get a little higher in the ranking list. But yeah, Megan 2, we introduced a new like robot doll lady. She wasn't very interesting. We lean way more into like the sci-fi. They tried to turn Megan into a superhero is kind of what it felt like, and that they tried to like lean into the iconic character thing, but they leaned, I think, the wrong way in making her an anti-hero protagonist icon, girl power positivity type thing while still being like a sassy little bitch character. And I just don't think they knew how to write what they thought that the audience was looking for, and they ended up creating just like a actually very lackluster film. There wasn't really a whole lot of substance to it. There really wasn't a whole lot of humor. And it just really fell flat. I wasn't entertained. I was, in fact, bored for a lot of it. Similar feelings that I felt in Megan 1. I think I talked about this when I originally talked about the first Megan film way back when it came out, is I didn't really like the whole first half of that film. I thought it was not super interesting until Megan started killing people. In Megan 2, I kind of felt that way the entire time. Nothing really happened that piqued my interest at all. I didn't really care about the plot. I didn't care about any of the characters. So there was just nothing for me to like grab onto. So Megan 2, 2.5 stars out of 5. Where we are at the bottom, we're kind of in no particular order here until I get to like what I think is the very worst movie of the year. Jermaine Clement was surprisingly in Megan 2, though. He's had quite the run, Jermaine Clement. He was in that. He was in the new Avatar movie, Avatar Fire and Ash, that came out this year. He was in the previous Avatar too, I guess, but he was in Harold and the Purple Crayon that came out last year or the year before, 2024, I think Harold and the Purple Crayon came out. Jermaine Clement will kind of just, like, he'll do anything, you know? Like, offer him a movie, he'll do it. And sometimes that means being in Avatar, and sometimes that means being in Megan 2, you know? But good for it. He's always, like, the best part in any scene that he's in, so good for him. Okay, before I get to, like, my very bottom 3 films of the year, I'm gonna quickly mention another direct-to-streaming. I know I went on a whole speech about how I'm not going to talk about the direct-to-streaming trash that's at the bottom of my list, but I have to just talk about this one. It's this movie called Merv that came out on Amazon Prime. It's supposed to be a Christmas movie right off the bat, the least Christmassy Christmas movie I've ever watched in my life. And I've seen a lot of non-Christmassy Christmas movies. It's my main complaint about a lot of direct-to-streaming Christmas movies is that they are not whimsical enough. And there have been some other like direct-to-streaming Christmas movies that I saw this year that were like not great, but are higher up on the list just for the sheer fact that they were Christmassy. They were like, I felt like I was watching a Christmas movie, and that is like the number one thing I'm looking for when I watch a Christmas movie. like the movie Oh What Fun was not a great movie. That's another one that came out direct to Amazon Prime, but it was spirited. Like, it got me in the Christmas spirit. Despite the plot holes and story problems and unlikable characters, for the most part, I felt like I was watching a Christmas movie. I had fun watching it. Merv, I did not have fun watching it. I hated the characters. They had no chemistry, and I was annoyed the entire time I was watching it, and I'm really angry about it, and so I wanted to talk about it. Like, I'm almost offended by how bad this movie is. It's starring Zooey Deschanel and Charlie Cox, which are two, like, big names. Charlie Cox played what, Daredevil? I never saw Daredevil, but I know he's like, that's like a big thing. And Zooey Deschanel is in a lot of stuff. She was in Elf, like one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time. Like, not that that like means anything for other Christmas movies that she's in, but she's a big actress, you know? And somehow both of them give no personality in this film. They certainly have no chemistry with each other. They treat each other like shit the whole time. So the thing about Merv, it's about this couple played by Zooey Deschanel and Charlie Cox. They break up, they have a dog, and they share custody of the dog, which right off the bat, stupid. And they don't have kids together, they just have a dog, and they split custody and switch off with the dog, which already I don't buy it. And they notice the dog is sad, and the dog is only happy when they're together, and they spend the whole movie trying to make the dog happy. They take it on vacation to Florida, so half the movie is in Florida where it's sunny and they're on a beach and it's supposed to be Christmas time and there ain't one Christmas tree out there. And they get back together despite bickering and like I said, treating each other like shit because their dog is happiest when they're together and they don't want their dog to be sad. So for the sake of their dog, they decide that they're soulmates and they get back together. And that's the movie. You broke up for a reason. They did not get along. They proved they didn't get along. They proved through every interaction until the very end that they didn't work as a couple, but because their dog was happy when they were together, they got back to, like, your dog will get over it. It's a dog. It'll get over it. It's fine. So, also, the movie ends, you think it's over, credits roll, end credit scene, she proposes to him. It's Christmas, they're around the Christmas tree, they got another dog, so now there's them and two dogs. Zooey Deschanel gets on one knee, proposes to Charlie Cox, and he says yes. After he treats her like shit more than she treats him like shit. He like does like awful backstabby things to her right before they get back together, and she proposes to him. Propaganda. Propaganda. No, woman proposed to man propaganda? I don't think so. After everything that happened, the movie pisses me off. I had to talk about it. I don't think anyone else heard about it, but might as well be the worst movie of 2025. It's not, but I want to talk about that one. Merv, I gave that one 1.5 stars out of 5. Okay, and then the actual bottom 3 movies of 2025, in my opinion. Starting with 3, going down to 1 being the worst. Number 3, A24's Death of a Unicorn. I hated Death of a Unicorn so much. I hated it. I talked about this already on TikTok and Instagram, but I'll gladly hate on it again. In Death of a Unicorn, Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd are a father and daughter. They hit a unicorn, they think it's dead, and they realize that it has like magical healing powers. Paul Rudd works for this like rich family that works for like pharmaceutical company or something. They take advantage of the unicorn's powers to make money. Whatever. Rich people exploiting nature to get richer. That's the thing. That's the social commentary that we're working with here. Extremely groundbreaking stuff here. Nobody has touched on this subject before. The most simplest for a movie about unicorns. It's the most simple, straightforward, but like in a bad way kind of plot. And the unicorn itself, there's multiple unicorns in the movie. They look terrible. Obviously they're CGI. I mean, they could have like done up a horse, you know, and put it against a green screen. I'm not really for like using real animals. You can use like real dogs and cats because there are like dog and cat actors out there. There's horse actors out there that you could put against a green screen and it's fine. Or, you know, I just think it could have looked better than it did. And if you're gonna have like a CGI creature, it'd probably be best not to like use it a whole lot, or any creature really. As good or bad as it might look, it's just not as scary when you constantly show it. And that's something that I've said so many times for lots of different like horror movies before. It's not scary when you keep showing it. If we keep seeing the creature, it doesn't really matter how it looks, but especially when it looks bad, I get less and less scared every time you show it. And every time they showed this horrible CGI, weird, slimy looking unicorn, all 3 of them, there's I think like 3 of them in the movie, it was just so stupid. It just looked so bad, and they showed it so much. And then there was like this whole like fairy tale aspect where, only a maiden with a pure heart could control the unicorns. And Jenna Ortega, the alternative goth daughter who's been against this whole like exploiting the rich thing from the beginning, happens to be the pure maiden, and she's the one that can control the unicorns, and they listen to her and they get revenge on the rich people. Like, what are we doing? Are we stupid? Am I stupid? Like, what are we doing here? Like, is this a joke? I feel like they're playing with us. A24 is just playing a big fucking joke on us, giving me the most ridiculous fairy tale ass plot with the dumbest looking unicorns, and everyone's taking it so seriously like it's a real movie. It was so stupid. I cringed so hard. I was insulted. I was more offended than I was by Merv and their woman proposing to man propaganda. Was I supposed to be scared? Was I supposed to be scared by these CGI unicorns? Are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me? That's all I have to say about that. Death of a Unicorn, I give 1 out of 5 stars. My second least favorite movie of 2025, what I thought was the second worst film, was Black Bag. Black Bag, all I can say, like, the main thing that I thought about Black Bag was that it was so boring. It was just boring, and it didn't make sense. And the whole thing about Black Bag, it's basically about these intelligence agents who are a couple and they're intelligence agent friends. And Black Bag is like a code word for confidential. Like, oh, where are you going tonight? Oh, Black Bag, it's confidential. That means it's work related. I can't tell you because I need to protect you because we're all intelligence agents here. So it's basically just like, I can't tell you. And I think that that's kind of an excuse or a cop-out for the movie to like not tell us what's going on in the movie or what it's about. Like, I don't really know what happened in the movie or what they were trying to do. There's like a scandal that they're trying to uncover. Someone's trying to frame Michael Fassbender's wife and he exposes them, but I don't know what they were trying to frame her for. And she wasn't able to clear her own name because Black Bag, they just didn't tell us anything, or they didn't show us anything. It's like the movie thought it was being clever. This is a movie about super top secret agents. And everything that's happening in the film is so secret that we can't even tell you, the audience, about it. But just believe us that something very exciting and suspenseful is happening right now, and there's a gotcha going on here. There's this big moment of like sitting at the table with all the intelligence agents where it's like the big reveal. I understand your plan. I gotcha. But I had no idea what was happening. And maybe it's not as confusing as I'm making it out to be, and I just wasn't paying attention because I was so goddamn bored the entire time I was watching this movie. The main sin is not that it was confusing, it's that it was boring. Nothing else about the plot or anything matters. Not that I could remember. Not that I'm gonna waste my time looking it up. Black Bag, it was just boring. And that's the worst thing a movie can be. So Black Bag gets 1.5 out of 5 stars. The extra 0.5 is for cinematography and I guess performances, because they weren't bad performances. It's just the writing and the filmmaking and everything else. And then finally, what I considered the worst movie that I saw that came out in 2025 is Fackham Hall. I did a trailer reaction to the trailer for Fackham Hall, amongst other things. Not long before it came out, I want to say like a month or two, I did like a trailer reaction to like movies coming out in December of 2025, and then when it came out, I saw it, because when I watched the trailer, I was excited for it. It looked funny. I didn't think it was going to be like fantastic. I did think it looked stupid, and so I was going in expecting like a funny, stupid movie that could get a couple of laughs out of me. And Tom Felton was in it, and I haven't seen Tom Felton in a movie in a while. Like, he's been in stuff, but he's not in them very often. And the Naked Gun remake also came out this year, and it looked like it was in, like, that comedic style of, like, jokey gag, joke gag, like, every scene, every second, like, something's a gag, something's a joke. And I did really like the Naked Gun remake. I had already seen it by the time I had reacted to the Fackham Hall trailer. So I had some semblance of hope for Fackham Hall, but oh my god, I wanted to leave so bad. I never left a screening for a movie because the movie was bad, but I wanted to so bad. And if my fiance wasn't there watching the movie with me, I would have left. I wouldn't have wasted my time watching the movie. And there was like this whole, like, there was like a plot to the movie of this family. It's like a parody of British media, like Bridgerton or things like that. I don't really watch British media or TV shows or anything like that, but there was a whole plot of this like rich family, and the daughter's getting married to someone she doesn't like, but they have to marry her off, and someone has this identity, and we need to find out who it is. I didn't care about any of that. None of it mattered. I would have been perfectly fine leaving and not figuring it out how any of it ended or how any of it got revealed or resolved. And I never would have thought about it again because it was just the least funniest comedy I maybe have ever seen in my life. Every single joke, gag. I don't know what the opposite of laughter is, but that's what I was doing. I was unlaughing every single time. There was puns, there was jokes, there was visual gags, there was gross out humor. They were throwing everything at me constantly. Not 1 second was funny to me at all. A lot of it was extremely nonsensical. For the most part, it was nonsensical, like things getting shoved up butts, people getting like horribly maimed and injured and then being fine for no reason, just because the joke is that they got hurt. I don't know. Throw up, spit, whatever. Someone randomly standing in a penguin costume. It just humor for humor's sake, I guess, which I know was the style of comedy going into it because The Naked Gun is kind of like that, but somehow The Naked Gun just does it so much better. I don't know what the people who wrote this were doing, but it was just awful. It was terrible. And Jimmy Carr is in it, and I think Jimmy Carr had a hand in producing. I don't know if he had a hand in writing, but if he did, that would explain some of it because I've never found Jimmy Carr funny. I've seen some of his stand-up specials before, and I just hate his jokes so much. However, everybody in my theater was laughing their fucking asses off. I kid you not. I went to an early fan screening because if I can see a movie early, I'll see it early. Thomas and Mackenzie was probably the best part. She tried her best. Everyone was taking it seriously, I guess, but to a fault. Thomas and Mackenzie, I guess, had the best performance if I had to pick, but she couldn't save the mess that they had given her. But I guess maybe everyone that I saw the movie with that night was just a huge Jimmy Carr fan, maybe, or just British media fan, because everyone was laughing so loud the entire time, except for me. So maybe I'm wrong, but I hated Fat Kamal so much. It literally is my least favorite movie of 2025. It was just terrible, and I give that one 1 out of 5 stars. So those were my bottom films of 2025. Now let's move to the middle of the spectrum. I want to talk about a couple big releases that I felt like were very talked about, that a lot of people liked, that I was kind of disappointed by. So I think that they were significant enough for me to mention. So this is kind of the dishonorable mentions portion. And I'm really just going to kind of brush through these because we have a lot to talk about with the top ones. But I was really disappointed with Honey Don't. Honey Don't was directed by Ethan Coen, and I was really excited for it. I had really, really high expectations, and maybe that's why it fell flat for me, was because I had it on such a high pedestal, because Ethan Coen had previously directed Drive-Away Dolls, which I love. Drive-Away Dolls was in my top 3 films of 2024. I loved it. I thought it was so funny. And Honey Don't seemed like something very similar, and it was by the same filmmaker, starring the same person, Margaret Qualley, who I also like, and it seemed like she was playing somewhat of a similar character. She's also a Southern lesbian. She was a Southern lesbian in Drive-Away Dolls. She was hilarious. And she's a Southern lesbian in Honey Don't. Ethan Coen just loves her as a Southern lesbian. I don't know. There's an interesting small town investigator murder sort of plot. Aubrey Plaza's in it. Chris Evans is in it. It just seemed like it was going to be good, but it was kind of a mess. It was kind of all over the place. The ideas didn't really quite seem that developed. The mystery aspect wasn't that interesting. There's all these quote-unquote mysterious deaths, and we're following Honey O'Donoghue, played by Margaret Qualley, trying to figure out how these deaths are connected, obviously, and what's going on. Meanwhile, Chris Evans is this preacher character, and everyone's doing a great job with their performances. I think the characters themselves are the most interesting parts of Honey Don't, but the story, I don't really feel like it was very well thought through. It should have been more of a character study. If we kind of gave less attention to the twists and turns of the plot, then we could have had a much better film. I feel like with Drive-Away Dolls, we focused a lot on the relationship between the two main characters, and in Honey Don't, we didn't really have that main relationship to focus on. Honey O'Donoghue doesn't really have that other character to bounce off of. She has Aubrey Plaza, but they don't really have that same thing going on. They're not partners in crime here. There's a little bit of a romance aspect, but it's not as genuine, and the dynamic is completely different, and there's a betrayal that happens very quickly anyway. It just doesn't work the same, and I'm not saying I wanted the exact same movie as Drive-Away Dolls. I just think everything that they were trying to do in that movie worked so much better than everything that Ethan Coen was trying to do in Honey Don't. So Honey Don't, I give 2 out of 5 stars. Another movie that I really didn't like, but I saw a lot of people talk about and say that they liked, was Bring Her Back. With Bring Her Back, I don't really know how to describe why I didn't like it that much. I feel like this movie was more about the vibes than anything, and the story itself didn't really make a whole lot of sense, and there were a lot of interesting ideas that were not quite fleshed out very much. I think what happens with a lot of movie fans or horror fans, there's all different types of movie fans, obviously. I am just one type of movie fan, and there's other different types. I think a lot of different types of movie fans, the type that liked this movie, are the kind that go just for, like, the imagery and don't really look deeper into it. I'm very analytical, and when it comes to analyzing this movie, there's just so many things that just don't add up. We could spend all day talking about the plot of this movie because there was just so much plot going on. There's a brother and a sister. The sister is blind. The brother is older. He's almost 18. He can't quite get guardianship of his sister yet. Their parents are dead. They go to live with a foster mother played by Sally Hawkins, who's very creepy, conniving, scary foster mother. She has this other foster child who doesn't really talk, is kind of kept in another room. Okay, we've switched out the microphone. I finished filming this entire video, and then in editing I realized, one, the audio was very, very crunchy, and it only got crunchier as the video went on, and I had lost the last 10 minutes of audio, and I didn't realize it until I was editing a few days later. I lost half the video I filmed, so I'm sitting down to refilm it. I put on the exact same outfit because I haven't even talked about this movie yet. This video is going to take so long to release, but we're back. We're gonna jump right back into, in the middle of us talking about Bring Her Back. The plot of it really doesn't matter because it's all about visuals anyway, but I understand what it is. It's not that it's confusing. I understand that Sally Hawkins is trying to bring her daughter back, hence the namesake of the movie, and she's doing so through some strange voodoo rituals. And she's using some child that she claims is her nephew as a vessel, but really it's some child that she found. I don't really understand why she needs to use this child as a vessel when this blind girl that she is fostering, that is going to be the vessel for her child. And this blind girl has an older brother who she is also fostering, who wants to become her guardian but isn't 18. There's a lot going on here that doesn't really need to be going on because the point of this movie is the visuals. So as an analytical person, though, I can't really accept all of the questions that I have. I can't just overlook them. She also tries to make the older brother look crazy so that she can kind of have her way with these children in the way of possession and trying to get what she wants with bringing her daughter back and doing all these weird voodoo things. There's these really cool videotapes that I would have loved to know more about. I just think this movie had a lot of different directions it was trying to go in, and it would have been great if any one of them was a little bit more developed. But it looked great. The vibes were nice and creepy, spooky, scary. But all the issues I had with it were very similar to issues I had with the movie Talk to Me, which was the film that these filmmakers had previously made. Really good looking movie. The vibes were awesome, but the story itself left me with a lot more questions than answered. It's kind of like we're starting right in the middle of a story, or it's like we're starting with the sequel. Specifically with Talk to Me, where did this hand come from? How did these children get it? How does it work? I don't need to know everything, but when you're giving me something that seems to be rich with lore, I would like to know some of that lore, right? Otherwise don't introduce that to me. Or place it in the hands of someone where I would have questions if this person had this thing. Like with Sally Hawkins' character, how did she stumble across these videotapes? How did she learn how to do this? How did she come to this solution? There was just a lot of questions, and that's just how I watch movies. If I'm not the type of person who can turn their brain off, and I don't feel like this is the type of movie where we're supposed to turn our brains off. So I think it did itself a disservice in overcomplicating the plot when it really wanted to be a visual movie, and it was, and that's fine. Just lean more into that and maybe take some of that extra plot out. I also don't like a sad ending, and Bring Her Back and also Talk to Me both had sad endings. I just don't like them. That's personal preference. If you're gonna put your characters through so much torture, specifically with the older boy,
in Bring Her Back. I wasn't really on the girl's side in Talk to Me, but in talking about Bring Her Back, this poor boy goes through so much and so much torture and gaslighting just to have a very unceremonious ending. It made me really sad, and I just don't like to be sad. I watch movies as an escape, so I don't really like sad movies. Bring Her Back, I give 2.5 out of 5 stars. In the category of movies I heard people say were really, really good for one reason or another, and I thought they were just okay, were Presence and Together, and I don't really feel like elaborating further on either of those. I will say for Together, though, it did feel a little bit like they didn't solve anything, like glorifying codependency. Another movie I was really, really looking forward to that I was disappointed by, that I don't really want to get into very much, just as we're ending Dishonorable Mentions here, was Him. With Him, I was just kind of thinking, like, it's just football. Like, what are we doing here? With all the like savior, God, Jesus imagery that was in Him. And I get like toxic masculinity, and I get everything it was going for. It just really, I was really expecting a much deeper message than what we were given. But I don't think that's really a controversial take, because everybody I've talked to about Him who has also seen Him agrees with me and has given a very similar take. So I'm not really talking about Him because the general consensus for every other critique I've seen has said the same thing. That is also definitely like a visuals movie. They wanted to make a movie about Jesus symbolism for football, but they just didn't know how to really take it deeper. It was just about the symbolism itself. They weren't really saying anything. It wasn't even really about racism or anything like that. I didn't even really feel much about toxic masculinity. I don't even think they were really saying much about that. It was really just like the whole savior complex type of thing, but even that, it was just in visuals. There was nothing else in messaging. It's just you're number one, you're saving everybody because you're good at football. And they put in no effort. They, the filmmakers, the writers, whoever, put in no effort to actually try to say anything new or interesting or add anything to that concept. But it looked great. And that's all I have to say about Him. And just for visuals and performance alone, Him I do give 3 out of 5 stars, but under the surface, like at its core, I saw no substance in it. I may have also already talked about the monkey. I don't know if you can see my monkey behind me. Can you? He's here. It's dark. It's dark from my perspective. Here he is, my monkey thing. I'm sure I did. I think I remember having him on the desk when I reviewed the monkey, but that was another movie I was a little bit disappointed by. But if we're going to talk about every single movie that I was disappointed by this year, that would be a whole video in and of itself. I want to talk about the best movies now. Before I get to the best of the best, though, one honorable mention for a movie that all the reviews said was bad. Everybody I heard talk about this movie said it was bad, but I quite enjoyed it, was The Home. The Home is a horror movie starring Pete Davidson. It's the only non-comedy I've seen that stars Pete Davidson. The only non-comedy I've seen with Pete Davidson in it. He was in the movie Bodies, 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 which is a horror comedy, but there's still comedy in there. This is the only, like, just general non-comedy thing I've seen Pete Davidson in. And I am biased, I will say. I'm a very actor-focused person when it comes to film and media. There's a lot of movies I watch just simply because an actor is in it. And I mention that a lot when I talk about movies. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. The Home by no means belongs at the top of the list of films from 2025, but I don't think it belongs in the bottom either. I enjoyed it for what it was. Yes, I liked it because I like Pete Davidson. I do think he did a pretty good job. He fit the character well. What The Home is about, if you didn't see it, it was in theaters, which I was pleasantly surprised by, because it did feel like a Tubi film. Pete Davidson is a big name right now, so it got theater release, which was great. Pete Davidson plays a graffiti artist guy, young man, who gets into some trouble, and instead of like going to jail, essentially, he gets sentenced to help out at this retirement home. So he's kind of like a helper, groundskeeper guy at this retirement home where weird things are happening. He thinks there's like this conspiracy where the old people are like getting marked or getting killed, and basically he's trying to figure it out. He makes friends with a couple of them. It's essentially like a horror mystery thriller of trying to figure out what is going on with these old people in this home. And then there's a really big twist at the end, which, spoilers if you haven't seen it, I would recommend it, but we'll get into spoilers. It's basically all fake. Everything was a setup as a trick for Pete Davidson. The old people are messing with him, making him think there's a conspiracy, because what's actually happening here is all the old people are essentially immortals. They figured out how to harvest something from like young people's like brain stems through their eyes in order to stay young. Like they're all like over 100 years old, and for fun, so they don't get bored, they put on a show for their new targets when they get them, to make them think that they're just feeble old people who are being taken advantage of before they attack and steal their young brain energy. So that's what they're doing to Pete Davidson, and then they reveal themselves and they try to steal his young brain energy. And there's a really great scene after Pete Davidson figures this out, when the previous victims help him escape, that he just slaughters all the old people. It's very John Wick at the end. There's just a whole bloody slasher fest of Pete Davidson mowing down these old people, and it's great. It makes up for any bad, weird scenes that may have happened earlier in the film. It's all I remember. That's not true. I do remember other ones, but that was definitely the best part, is the end when Pete Davidson just murders all these old people. It makes the entire movie worth it. So if you haven't seen it, or if you started watching it and didn't finish it, go back and finish it, because it's truly something to be seen. Incredible film, really. And even though it has the whole twist of like, oh, none of it was real, it's a new take on that twist. It's not like it was all a dream or anything like that. I did think that it was a pretty unique plot, a pretty unique twist in that way, and I give it credit for that. I did like the story. So yeah, The Home, I actually enjoyed it. It's not a good movie by any means. I'm not going to say that it's a good movie, but I was entertained. So I give The Home 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, now we are finally going to talk about the good movies, the best movies that came out in 2025. There actually was a pretty decent handful of really good movies that came out last year. I'm not going to be able to talk about like my actual top 10, because then we'll be here for hours and hours and hours. I'm going to talk about 5 of them in depth, but just to run through ones, these are movies that I thought were really good going up to number 1. Just to mention a few, I actually did really enjoy the Silent Night, Deadly Night remake. That one is in my top 20. It was also like a straight to Tubi movie, but I would be amiss if I didn't mention it. Yes, I am biased for Rowan Campbell, who also starred in Halloween Ends. I feel contractually obligated to mention that one because I have mentioned Halloween Ends so much, and I hope Rowan Campbell does more things. I really like The Roses. I thought it was really funny. I love comedies, and I don't feel like comedies come out enough, and that one was really enjoyable. The Long Walk was really good, better than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be bored because they are just walking the entire time. I'm so sorry, The Long Walk. I wasn't familiar with your game. Good movie. Another apology that I don't want to make to Marty Supreme. I was really against watching it because I hate Timothée Chalamet for reasons we don't have time to get into, but I watched it, and he's a little piece of shit in that movie, and that made it a lot easier for me to watch because for some reason, when I don't like an actor, if they're playing an unlikable person, it's easier for me to watch the movie, and that's what happened with Marty Supreme, and Marty Supreme was a really good movie. The Phoenician Scheme, I was surprised by that because I've watched every single other Wes Anderson movie. I haven't really liked any of them. Wes Anderson, I appreciate him so much for what he does. I love how specific his aesthetic is. His style, I love it. Visually, I love him. His stories, his characters bug the shit out of me. I don't know what it is. I don't like his humor style. I don't like his characters. I've talked about this before. I've given him chance after chance after chance. And I gave him one more chance with the Phoenician Scheme, and he got me on this one. He did. I'd say this is the only Wes Anderson film I've seen so far that I would say I actually liked. Did I love it? No. Did I like it? Yes. Which it's hard for me to say with any other Wes Anderson movie. I don't really think I've ever really liked a Wes Anderson movie before. So now let's actually talk about these movies. One of the best movies of the year was a movie that also made me feel disgusting and miserable, was the film Eddington. Eddington is a film by Ari Aster that takes place in 2020 during the COVID lockdown in the small town of Eddington, New Mexico. It basically depicts the events of a sort of political war between the sheriff, played by Joaquin Phoenix, and the mayor, who's up for re-election, played by Pedro Pascal, and the characters surrounding both of those people. It felt very realistic. It felt very uncomfortable. Something Ari Aster does very well is make very squirmy, uncomfortable, icky feeling films. He made Midsummer. Midsummer is one of those movies that I was literally squirming in my seat when I was watching it. I was so uncomfortable watching Midsummer. And it wasn't just the content of the film, it's everything. It's the visuals, it's the performances, it's the sound, right? That's something that Ari Aster does very well. Beau is Afraid is another film that he made, also starring Joaquin Phoenix, that I just felt disgusting watching it because of the content, but also the visuals and performances and sound. Ari Aster just loves to make you squirm, and by golly, he did it again with Eddington. But all three of those films that I just listed are all very different. He really just touches on different parts of humanity in order to get these very specific feelings. And I very strongly believe that a movie is good. A movie really does its job when it can make you feel so strongly. It did its job, and it did a good job. And that's what Eddington is. I won't get too much into the plot of that one because there are twists and turns. There are definitely some very shocking moments in it. It was so impactful. Just even transporting back to being in 2020 and being in a grocery store, and there's that one person who refuses to wear a mask and just has to make a scene about it. I clench, and he took that feeling and put it into a movie. And casting Joaquin Phoenix, he's that feeling in a man for me. I hate Joaquin Phoenix, not because of him as a person. I don't know him, obviously, but every movie I've ever seen him in, and every character I've seen him play has just been a miserable, pitiful, and or awful person, where I either feel very, very sorry for him in a very sad, pitiful way, or I just hate him so much because he's evil and disgusting. He's never played like a likable guy in my eyes, at least in the movies of his that I've seen. And that's just something that he's always tapped into. That's just kind of his brand. And Ari Aster knows that. And he keeps putting him in his movies and harnessing Joaquin Phoenix's rancid vibes and putting him in his rancid fucking films. All these negative things I'm saying about Eddington, it's a great movie. It's masterful filmmaking. My heart wants to say I hated it, only because of how awful I felt while I was watching it, but it is a masterful film. The performances, I forgot it was Joaquin Phoenix while I was watching it because he just lost himself in this character. Pedro Pascal as well. I'm not a Pedro Pascal girly, which I think helped me lose myself in these characters and forget that these were actors. Because that's the thing about being a very actor-driven person, is it's hard for me to forget that this is an actor that I really like, and I just see the actor as I'm watching the film, and I'm not able to see that this is a character. That's not necessarily their fault, that's kind of on me. In this case, not really having an attachment to anyone in this movie, except for Austin Butler, who is in this movie too, but he's only in 2 scenes. I didn't forget that he was Austin Butler a second that he was on screen, but that was on me less than it was on him. I was able to forget, though, the other actors because these were really, really good, tense performances. The sort of anti-chemistry that Pedro Pascal and Joaquin Phoenix have together, the tension between these two characters, was great. And then just the way that the story spirals and gets out of hand really, really quickly was quite the roller coaster to watch and experience along with these characters. The weird little side characters. Emma Stone was great. It was so good to see her in a weird little role, not in a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. I hate Yorgos Lanthimos. I hate him. I did not see Begonia. I'm not going to. I know I wouldn't like it. Poor Things was the bane of my existence. I talked about it so much whenever that movie came out, and I hated Kinds of Kindness. I hate everything Yorgos Lanthimos does. I hate that he has laid so much claim over Emma Stone. So it was great to see Emma Stone in a movie that has nothing to do with Yorgos Lanthimos, so I could enjoy her again. So yeah, Eddington was a very, very good film. Eddington, I give 4 out of 5 stars. The next movie I want to talk about, that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, but I really enjoyed it, was Dangerous Animals. Dangerous Animals is a shark attack movie starring Jai Courtney that came out much earlier last year that I liked because it was kind of like a very straightforward but unique take on like a slasher movie. Jai Courtney is this Australian like shark boat tours guy that traps women and feeds them sharks. And that's what he does. And he films them. He has some sort of fetish. He doesn't really go into why he does it or how long he's done it. We don't need to know. This is one of those cases where we don't really need to know our villain. We just need to know what he does, and that's enough for us to be afraid of him. It's a case of it's scarier that we don't know why he does it or how long he's done it. And also we can assume based on his actions, right? So I thought this movie did a good job of kind of balancing what we needed to know in that sense. Because a complaint I make a lot about horror movies in general is revealing too much or revealing too little. I think this movie found a good balance of not revealing anything about Jai Courtney, like verbally, like we didn't need him to like give a speech or anything about where he came from and growing up in a family where his sister got eaten by sharks and it turned him on as a kid. We didn't need to know any of that. And a worse movie would have done that. All we need to know is there's this crazy guy who's feeding chicks to sharks and making tapes about it. Our lead protagonist is a girl who he kidnaps, who has no family, has no friends, seemingly homeless, living in her truck. So there's no one to miss her, no one to go looking for her. And she gets trapped and is basically just trying to fight her way out and not get eaten by a shark. At the same time, a guy that she had a one-night stand with is looking for her. So there's also kind of like a weird, fun horror romance happening, which I thought was an interesting way to add like a B-plot. It was a cute way to introduce this other character. Like, I don't think it would have been as interesting if it was just like her boyfriend and some like her friend that she already knew. I thought it was interesting that just this guy that she had just met the day prior and hooked up with is now like going to look for her because she went missing because she has nobody else. I thought that was an interesting character dynamic. This movie as a whole, like I said, like I just thought it was a unique take on this sort of genre. The slasher that feeds people to sharks, the girl who knows nobody, the guy who is just going so hard, so ride or die for a girl he hooked up with randomly like the other night. Like it all was like very fun and quirky. It was just a really good summer slasher movie, and I don't know why I didn't see a whole lot of other people talk about it or enjoy it as much. I thought, I like a good straightforward movie. The only complaints I would have about it, as much as I liked that they didn't give away too much like about the villain, another thing I do complain about with horror movies when there's like a monster aspect is like showing the monster too much. I felt the opposite with Dangerous Animals because a shark isn't really a monster. It's just an animal. But like with Death of a Unicorn, you know, that's not a real thing. So it was just like a terrible CGI monster that I don't want to see because it's not real and not scary. With a shark, that's a real thing that you could show more and it would be scary every time. That's what we're there for. And we see a couple of them, but I think it could have used more. Honestly, there could have been 1 or 2 other shark attacks. There's a few too many moments of our main girl getting away from Jai Courtney and then he finds her and brings her back because most of the time she's trapped on his boat. And it's one of those movies where she's trapped, she has to use her street smarts to get out. So she gets out of the cuffs and then he gets her back and recuffs her a different way. And then she's able to get on a lifeboat and then he gets on a lifeboat and brings her back a different way. And there was just a few too many times where she gets away, but then oh no, she doesn't. And I would have been fine if we sacrificed 1 or 2 of those instances and replaced it with another shark attack. Because I really liked the shark attack scenes. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 of them. I think if we threw 1 more in there, the movie as a whole would have been a lot better balanced. As it was pretty well balanced with everything, but I think we could have tipped the scales even a little bit better. As a whole, Dangerous Animals really surprised me with how much I enjoyed it. Like I said, I thought it was a really good summer slasher movie, and I give Dangerous Animals 3.5 out of 5 stars. I know that's less than I gave Eddington, but that doesn't really mean anything. My rating system is just, it doesn't go in the order you think it would. And that's always been hard for me to explain. I have Dangerous Animals higher than Eddington, but I can't say that I liked Eddington more just because Eddington made me feel so gross. Anyway, moving on to the next movie on my list, Wake Up Dead Man. I loved Wake Up Dead Man. I had to watch it a couple of times before I decided that I loved it, and every time I watched it, it moved up a little bit more on my list, because it's really long. It's 2.5 hours, and something I complain about constantly is that every movie nowadays is at least 2 hours. I'm so thankful when a movie comes out and it's 90 minutes. I'm like, oh, thank God a movie is 90 minutes. So when Wake Up Dead Man came out and it was 2.5 hours, I was like, oh no. The first hour and a half, excellent. And then it got a little convoluted after that. So I stand by that movies don't need to be over 2 hours. If this movie had been cut down to 2 hours or less, it would have been easily 5 stars. But I think they did a little too much with this one. That being said, I still really loved it. I loved all the characters in this. Josh O'Connor is fantastic. I like the previous 2 movies in the Knives Out franchise. Knives Out is great. Glass Onion is pretty good. And Wake Up Dead Man, solid threequel. Love Daniel Craig. I love Andrew Scott. I wanted a lot more of him. Jeremy Renner, I've never really been a big fan of, but he is so funny in this movie. And everybody else too. I think if there was another issue, besides it being a little bit convoluted in the end, which I'll get into, there's a little too many characters. And despite its length, I don't think there was enough time to give the characters the space that they needed to develop. We couldn't really get to know them each very much because there were so many of them, and each character was very interesting. I would have liked to get to know all of them a lot more. We mainly know about Josh O'Connor, Daniel Craig, obviously, and Josh Brolin, who is Jefferson Wicks, the Monsignor who dies. And they're all great. If we wanted to make the movie just about them with the side characters as lesser characters, like, that's fine. But because we introduced these interesting characters as being so important to the plot, I expected a lot more from them. So either we needed to cut a few of those characters or cut their involvement down, or you just needed to make it a 3.5 hour movie, honestly. This movie, I think, would have worked better as a character study anyway. It kind of already was, and that's what I loved about it. Everybody was so interesting. The visuals were so interesting. I loved the setting. It felt like very medieval church despite being modern day, but I also loved that it was modern day in this sort of like old-timey looking setting. But each of these characters had such specific personalities and quirks. I would have loved to know more about each of them. But then when we introduce this murder plot, the murder plot itself was fine, but once we get into like the hour-long reveal of like the events playing out of solving the murder and figuring out what actually happened, that's when we stray away from the characters and get into the convoluted plot of why and how the murder happened. I think the problem was that Rian Johnson just thought he had to top himself as compared to like Glass Onion, because Glass Onion had a very twisty reveal and so did Knives Out. And I think when you have like multiple movies that follow a similar formula with this whole big ensemble cast of interesting characters and then this very twisty turny plot, and you have to have a reveal that no one was expecting, but you also have to like set it up in a way that makes sense. It has to get bigger and bigger every time. So for Wake Up Dead Man, I feel like there was this expectation that it has to be bigger than Glass Onion because Glass Onion was bigger than Knives Out, and so on and so forth. So because of that, I think we lost a little bit when it came to Wake Up Dead Man, where it could have been dialed down as compared to Glass Onion in terms of like twists and turns, but the character aspect could have been dialed up. But all that being said, I still really loved it. I've watched it I think 4 times now, and rewatchability is like a really big thing for me when I'm choosing like good movies. for me, that gains like a ton of points. If it's a movie that I can watch over and over and over again and still really like it, it definitely gets a higher rating from me. So with Wake Up Dead Man, I guess like just the vibe of it I really like, and rewatchability is just a big thing for me when it comes to movies. I just really like watching movies again and again and again. I'm very much like a comfort person when it comes to movies. I love just like popping on a movie that I know I'm gonna like because I've seen it a million times, and just vibing with it. And Wake Up Dead Man, at least the first like hour and a half of it, has already proven to be that for me, and so it gained a lot of points for that. So Wake Up Dead Man, I give 4 stars out of 5. Before I talk about my top 3 of 2025, just to briefly mention the 2 others in my top 5 that I really liked, which both happen to be later sequels in franchises. Final Destination Bloodlines, which is the 6th film in the Final Destination franchise, but really good. The opening itself is just so visually incredible, the way just the opening came together. Like, forget the rest of the movie. Don't, because the rest of the movie is good too, but just the opening sequence was great. There's not a single movie in the Final Destination franchise that's bad. I've seen them all. They're not all as good as each other, but this one, so solid. And then Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, which is the 4th in the Bridget Jones franchise. They lost me with the 3rd one, Bridget Jones' Baby. Bridget Jones' Baby lost me hard, I have to say. I was not a fan of that movie. I was so sick of Bridget spending 3 movies chasing Mark Darcy and having her on and off toxic relationship, because at some point I was like, girl, you're 40 and you're chasing the same man who is doing the same things to you. Let him go. Pick a different man. Every other man is so much nicer to you, except for Hugh Grant, who is a cheater. Get rid of Hugh Grant, get rid of Mark Darcy, find a new man. She finally did, and then dumped him to get back with Mark Darcy, and I was just like so over it. So when I saw that Mad About the Boy was coming out, I was like, okay, let's do something different. And right away we find out that Mark Darcy is dead. I was like, thank God. Bridget is finally back in the game. She's flirting, she's dating, she's sleeping around, she's a little older, she's got 2 kids now, but she's back to being flirty, fun Bridget, and that's what we love to see. That's what's the best part about the first Bridget Jones movie. That's why Bridget Jones #1 is the best. That's when Bridget's at her best. And so we're back, and Bridget Jones Mad About the Boy, and then we get a nice, good, fun, warm ending. Love it, love to see it. Bridget Jones Mad About the Boy. That one's also a 4-star. Very cozy. And then now to talk about the top 3 movies of 2025. Starting off, number 3, Good Fortune. Good Fortune, I believe I've already talked about. Check out my full review on that. But just to reiterate, so funny. I loved Good Fortune. It was hilarious. Written, directed by, and starring Aziz Ansari. I've seen a lot of Aziz Ansari's like stand-up specials. I've always thought he was funny. It's been a while since he's done one. I liked his show Master of None. I love what he's written here. I love the story. I love the characters. Seth Rogen, I've always been a big Seth Rogen fan. I've always thought he was funny. Keanu Reeves, hilarious. Keanu Reeves should only ever do comedies. I mean, John Wick and all that stuff is good. I've seen all of those too. Those are fine. He's a good action guy. He's an excellent comic actor. Oh my God, he's so funny. Every time he opens his mouth, he's so fucking funny. That's why he doesn't talk in the John Wick movies, because he's just so funny every time he opens his mouth. Every time he says a word, it's hilarious. So in Good Fortune, Keanu Reeves plays an angel. He's a very low-level angel who decides he wants to do something big. He decides he wants to change Aziz Ansari's life. He chooses Aziz Ansari because Aziz is this guy who's like down on his luck, living in his car, barely getting by with these dead-end jobs, and Keanu decides that he wants to be his guardian angel and change his life, even though that's not really his job. He's not really that kind of an angel, but he wants to be. So he decides to switch his life with Seth Rogen's. Seth Rogen is this big old tech bro. Aziz thinks his life would be so much better if he was rich like Seth Rogen. So Keanu switches their lives to show Aziz that his life would not be better if he was rich, but it backfires because his life is so much better when he is rich. He can have whatever he wants. He has no worries. He doesn't have to live in his car. His life is great, and he doesn't want to switch back. And Seth Rogen is stuck with Aziz's life, making deliveries, living in his car. Keanu Reeves gets in trouble with the angels and becomes human, and also has to live as a poor homeless person with Seth Rogen. And so he's figuring out how to be human while also figuring out how to be poor. It's a movie that's very, very real. It's very relatable when it comes to how hard it is to be a person, to be an adult, and what that means and what you have to do, but also about what the good parts of humanity are. There's a lot of movies out there about humanity and about what it means to be human. Something like Swiss Army Man is one of my favorite examples of movies about being human, and I think Good Fortune is something akin to that in a way. It's obviously it's a very different take on that. It's through a very realistic lens of whether you're rich, whether you're poor. We all have things that make us human. We all have things that make life worth living for us. And Good Fortune explores those concepts and what that means for different people, and it does it in a really, really funny way. I love the jokes in this movie. All three of these people together have such excellent chemistry. The way they bounce off of each other, I love the dialogue. I love the physical chemistry. I can't stress enough how funny Keanu Reeves is. He really steals the show, and these are comedians that he's with. These are stand-up comedians that he is acting alongside, and he is overshadowing them comedically big time. Seth Rogen and Aziz Ansari are both also very, very funny, but Keanu's just clowning on him, like, pun intended, just clowning on him. So good. Good Fortune, I give 4.5 stars out of 5. Now on to my second favorite movie of 2025, Locked. I have definitely already talked about Locked. I talked about Locked not long after it came out, so you can check out that review. I love Locked. Another instance of me really loving an actor. I love Bill Skarsgård. If you've ever seen any of my videos ever, I've probably mentioned how much I love Bill Skarsgård. I love Pennywise. So a movie that's 90% just Bill Skarsgård locked in a car, obviously I'm gonna love it. But outside of that bias, I do think it is a really good film because Bill Skarsgård is a really good actor. And there were times when I watched this movie like 4 or 5 times in the past year since it came out. I saw it in theaters and then it came out on Hulu not long later. There are times where I did forget it was Bill Skarsgård because Bill Skarsgård is really good about losing himself in his characters. He's a really good character actor. So watching him in this movie, I feel like it's easy to forget that he's him, and that's the mark of a really good actor. And only a really good actor can carry a whole movie on their back like this. It really is just him playing with the voice of Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins doesn't show up in person until the very end. It's Bill Skarsgård is going to steal this car. He's down on his luck. He's going to steal this car. He gets trapped in it, and he's trapped for, like I said, like 90% of the movie as Anthony Hopkins is torturing him in this high-tech car. Anthony Hopkins is this doctor who wants to torture Eddie for trying to steal his car, basically using him to punish all criminals because he's just the one he caught in his trap, and he has a vendetta against all criminals because his daughter was murdered. So there's a lot of interesting layers to these people. Neither one is right in what they're doing. Neither one is completely wrong in what they want, at least, or at least what they think they're doing. Bill Skarsgård, his name is Eddie. I'll just call him Eddie. Eddie is desperate. He's not trying to pick on Anthony Hopkins in particular and steal his shit. He's desperate for money to get his own car back to take care of his own daughter. Anthony Hopkins is obviously angry. He lost his daughter. He can never get his daughter back, but there's all this crime that nobody's doing anything about. So when someone tries to steal his car, obviously he's not going to let that person go. Because in his mind, there has to be justice. Somebody has to atone for the sin of murder against his daughter. And then there's this battle of wits between the two of them. What is justice? Is it fair that I am in this situation? No. Is it fair that you're in this situation? No. And I just thought it was a really interesting story, really interesting plot. I loved these characters. The action, as low-key as it was, because it is in a car, there's a lot happening here, a lot that happens to Eddie, a lot that he does to try to get out. I love movies where the character or characters are all trapped in one location, like Saw or Cube, and just the range of emotions that Eddie goes through over the course of a couple of days that he's trapped here. His emotional range is excellent. I loved every bit of this movie from beginning to end. And yes, he was so hot as well. He's bleach blonde. He's got a bunch of shitty little tattoos. He's so nice to look at. I just love Bill Skarsgård, and I love looking at him. I will never not watch a movie that has him in it. Locked, I give 4.5 stars out of 5. My favorite film of 2025, the best movie of 2025, Sinners! Sinners was excellent. Sinners was excellent. It was another movie where I would say it was just masterful filmmaking. One of those movies where everything came together so beautifully. The performances, Michael B. Jordan in his dual roles as the Smokestack twins, Miles Catton as Sammy, their cousin. Oh my god, he was excellent. Jack O'Connell as Remick, the vampire, Haley Steinfeld. Everybody in this movie was on their A game. Ryan Coogler, of course, the director, he did an excellent job here. Everything was just so beautiful, from the visuals to the sound. It was a very powerful movie. Sinners deserves every single nomination that it has gotten. I hope it wins so many awards. If I manage to get this video out before the Oscars, which God willing I do, hopefully it wins so many awards, because it was amazing. I loved that this was a fantasy movie, that it was very real. It's a period piece. It's telling a very, very real story of freedom and the American dream, but it's also a fantasy. And its portrayal of freedom and this story of adversity and racism and immigration through the lens of a vampire story, I thought was incredible. I loved that take on the monster vampire genre. It's not something I've really seen before. Monster movies, vampire movies, a vampire bite, a werewolf transformation, things like that many times mean something. Like in Ginger Snaps, for example, the girls, it's not just that they turn into a werewolf. It represents girlhood. It represents menstruation, your period. Turning into a vampire, in this case, vampirism is like assimilation. It can represent a lot of things. One take from this, because the portrayal of vampires here is that they're a hive mind. Every vampire is connected once they are bitten, and they all have and share the same thoughts. It represents assimilation in that everyone's freedom is being taken. And the whole goal of our characters here, at least the Smoke and Stack twins and the characters surrounding them, is they are trying to live their own lives. And that's what most of the movie is about before we meet Remick, which is like an hour into the movie before we even see that the story is about vampires. Smoke and Stack are coming back to their hometown, trying to build a nightclub, trying to build a place where everybody can come together with music, with fun. The scene in the nightclub where all the music from these cultures, from past and present, come together and play together, I was moved almost to tears. It was a beautiful scene. Like I said, so powerful. Beautiful visuals, wonderful performances, wonderful sound. All I can say, this is why I don't really talk about movies that I loved very much, because all I can say is, like, it was great. Everything about it was great. And I don't want to give away parts of the plot, because I think you should just watch it. So most of the time when I make reviews, I just talk about movies that I didn't like and movies that I want to shit on, because all I can say is it was so good. You should watch it. My camera died again. They don't want you to see this video. They don't want you to hear my thoughts about the best and worst movies of the year. So we're filming the rest on my phone. Powerful movie, Sinners. Amazing. Incredible. If you've seen it, you already know that. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to tell you anything else about it. I've already told you so much. So watch it. Which, if you haven't seen it, where have you been? It's great. I even dressed as Remick for Halloween. I dressed as multiple things for Halloween, but Remick was the Halloween costume. I dressed as Remick on Halloween. And that's saying something. That's a big deal for me. So, Sinners, I give 5 stars. It was excellent, and I thought it was the best movie of 2025. One thing I will say is I've had some of the, like, other adults in my life, my grandparents and my fiance's mom and some other people. I'm fighting for my life defending Sinners to them. Not because I thought it was bad or anything, but even with my fiance as well. I'm fighting for my life with them because they all had similar points about not understanding why there were vampires in Sinners. They all said something akin to, I was watching a really good movie about Michael B. Jordan twins opening a nightclub, and then suddenly there were vampires? I don't get it. Why were there vampires? And I was trying to explain to all of them separately for so long why the vampires mattered and why they were necessary. So maybe other people think that. I thought that the vampires elevated the film. I don't think it would have been the same without the vampires. Would it still have been a good film without them? Maybe. If there was just KKK instead of vampires, sure. That would have been a more basic way to tell this story, and that just wouldn't have been as unique or as interesting. I think there's lots of different ways to tell a story, and I really, really enjoyed the fantasy take on something that is so dramatic and serious. I think that's something that we need sometimes, and I think it's okay to be really artistic with something that is so real. And I thought that this was a really beautiful, artistic, fun, fantastical take while also being a true scary horror film. But yeah, there's so many other movies that I watched in 2025. Definitely check out my full list on Letterboxd, my ranked list of movies I saw in 2025. You want to see all the rest of them that I saw and to follow along with the ones that I'm watching in 2026. Let me know your opinions on any of the movies that I mentioned or any other movies that came out in 2025. I would love to hear them. And what are some movies that you're looking forward to in 2026? That's going to be it for today. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Thanks for watching, honeybees. Make sure to like and subscribe. Bye!
Meow.